Hey everybody, it's Michael from Landscape, and today we're going to talk about the report feature, and we're going to walk through the creation of a really nice basic report. This should be enough to get you up and running with creating your own reports. But first, I want to clear up a common point of confusion and just touch briefly on the difference between a report, a view, and a form. Understanding these differences is kind of key to understanding the software as a whole and to understanding report creation. So first, a report is a way to pull data from Landscape and display it in a document format. You can create a report for just one record or merge a report with a view to create a report that displays a lot of data. For example, one of the simplest functions of a report is to use it to print a single property map. You could also use that same report to print maps of all of the properties if you combine that report with a view. So a view is a way to slice and dice your data and display it live in Landscape. It doesn't create its own document. In the software world, this is commonly called a query. Some of the concepts that are needed to build a view are used to build a report. I'll also show you in this video how you can use a view to make a report that displays data from multiple records. Finally, a form is just sort of tangentially related to views and reports. A form is a way to gather information that you don't already have and to normalize the data that you're gathering. It's a way to ask the same questions over and over again. So some folks might be familiar with Survey123, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, or Fulcrum mobile forms. But the main difference between those programs and Landscape is that you'll never need to ask a question like, what is the landowner name? Or where is the property in a Landscape form? Because you already have that data. But to pull in and display the data that you already know in a nice, pretty document format, like a monitoring report, you'll use the report function. So let's get started. Our goal today is to build a report that displays all of the issues we're aware of for all stewardship sites so that we can present it to a committee. And we want those issues reported by the most recent first. So you can see here, we have an issue that was found somehow in 2026, and then we can go all the way back in time to 2000. And we have a nice list. We have a header displaying the name of the report. And this is something you would like print out and give to a board. So we're going to build the structure of the report and then let Landscape fill in the details that it already knows. So to begin, we'll go to the Reports tab from the home screen or from the main screen. And you can see the existing templates that we have, and we'll click the plus button to add a new report template. In case you can't see the whole page, you can drag this around to resize everything. So on this window, you'll see the template on the left. This is the template of the report, and then you'll see the details on the right. So the first thing we're going to do, like most things in Landscape when you create something new, is we're going to give it a nice descriptive name. And so this is going to be called Issues Report. So next we're going to choose the category, and this is a really important step to sort of understand because you're telling the report which list in Landscape to look in for the data. So if you imagine all of your Landscape data lives in different lists, like a property list, a contact list, a list of issues, etc. This field called category is telling Landscape which list to look into to begin the report. Since we're looking at issues specifically, we're going to choose issues. And there are ways of accessing other lists within reports if you want to query more than more than one category. But that's a little advanced, and for now we're going to keep it really simple. Next, we have new page for each result. This means that when running a report from a view, like we're going to be doing to pull in all the issues, it'll create a new page for each list item that it finds. And we don't want that. We want all of the items on one page. So we'll make it no. Finally, if you remember, we want to see the most recently found issues first. We want those to go to the top of the report. And this is how we do that. Sort results on. And this will sort it either by alphabetical or by numeric, depending on the type of field you choose. Since we want to do date, we'll do identified on. And then sort ascending will start at the lowest value and go up, and we want to go in the opposite direction. We want to start at the highest value and go down. And so we'll say no. Now we'll head over to the template itself and begin building. You can press plus to add a new block. And the first thing we're going to do is make a report header for this report. This won't get repeated if it starts every time it finds a new section. That's the usefulness of a header. So I'm just going to use the header to give our report a nice title. So you can see that I clicked on just the block to open up the editor here on the right. You can also click the edit button to open up the block editor over here. So you can see it looks really simple, but there's really a lot you can do over here. So if you click it, you'll see a bunch of buttons appear. And a lot of these buttons look familiar for anyone who's used text editor, email, anything that uses words. You can change paragraph styling here and make stuff bold, italic, and bigger and smaller, change the color, etc. Over here, you can add a table. You can also insert an image if you want to include like your organization's logo. And then we'll get to this in just a moment when we start filling out the report. And this just clears all the work you've done and sets it back to nil. And then this is a little more advanced. And if you're watching this video, you probably don't want to look at code view right now. I don't want to look at code view. So what do we want to call this? We want to call it issues report. And as we type it, you can see it appears on our template over there to the left, but that's not quite big and brash enough for our issues report. So I'm going to align it center. I'm going to give it a heading format too. Great, and that's all I need to do for that particular block. So next, when we started a new report, it already starts with a basic content block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by editing this basic content block that it automatically created. However, I did just want to talk about these different types that we could potentially add if we wanted to. So basic block looks for information that lives on on the list that you're looking at in a 1-to-1 ratio. So since we're looking for issues within the category of issues, each issue has one issue associated with it. We're going to be using a basic block to build this report. In contrast, a repeated block displays information on the list that may have a 1-to-many ratio. So if, for example, you were creating a property report and wanted to list active contacts, a property might have more than one active contact. Think of a property with multiple landowners, for instance. And so you would use a repeated block to cycle through that list of active landowners and print out all of those active contacts. The other buttons are pretty self-explanatory. You can see we can add a photo block or a map block, signature block, or a report footer, which is like a report header. So hopefully that's clear enough. But for now, we're going to click back to our basic content block. I'm going to X out of that. Okay, back to our basic content block. And so now we're editing this block right here. So now we're gonna start building like the main meat of the issues report. And to do that, so we could, so let's see, we're trying to get to something like this with the stewardship site name and then the issues name, description and date found. So we could do that. We could start building it just by saying, let me see, stewardship site, issue name. But that doesn't result in very neat looking tables or lists when you eventually create a report from a view. You can see it's kind of spread out. So what I'd actually prefer to do, and what's a good thing to know how to do, is actually put all of that information into a table. So we'll say insert table, and there are 6 fields that I want to do, and there are 2 columns. So you can see this sort of expands and contracts based on what you want to add. So we'll do 6 by 2. And once you click inside the table, you'll see this toolbar changes to be the table editor. And you can do similar things with tables as you can with text. Nice basic stuff like change the style, sort of spread stuff out or compact it, make thick borders, change the colors and stuff like that. You can also change the column width by dragging stuff around. So I want mine to look kind of like that. And I want it to, let's see. So we're going to start with stewardship site. And then pro tip, you can just click tab to move over. But actually I want this to be bold. So let's make that bold. Great. So I'm going to click tab. I'm going to go down and I'm going to enter issue name, and I made it that bold by pressing Control B. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to say further description, and this is the most riveting part of the video. Date reported and date resolved. But now we need to tell Landscape what exactly to look for to find the stewardship site, what to look for to find the issue name, and stuff like that. So that's that button that I skipped over earlier, which is the merge fields button, which is sort of the point of a report. So the merge fields button tells Landscape which field to pull in for whatever record it's looking at. So for you can see when I click it, it pulls in initially everything associated with an issue, since that's the category that we're working in. And you can see on that list, we have the stewardship, and which is the stewardship site associated with that issue. So I'm going to click stewardship, and you can see it does this fancy looking text, and stewardship is in the middle. So that's perfect. Next, we're going to look for issue name. So I'm going to use that same button, and I'm going to say name. Going to go to the next one, description. Okay, and you can see this is really pretty simple. I'm just finding the names of the fields that I want. Sometimes that can be the most tricky part, and sometimes it might take a little bit of homework, but you can do it. Resolved on, because all of our issues get resolved. So finally, I want to change the styling of this top layer just a little bit. This top cell, just to highlight it, make it stand out a little bit. So I'm going to change the cell style of this top stewardship site field to say, to have that bold, border. So that's great. We're pretty much done. So you can X out. We'll save everything. And you can see as I was building it on the right, it was building it on the left here in the template. But there's nothing in it yet because it's a template. All you've done is you've told Landscape what the report's going to look like. But now we need to actually go and make the report. So I'm going to go back. It'll save all of our changes. You can see it shows up in the list of report templates. So now I'm going to go to views. You remember views is how we slice and dice data in Landscape and display it in customized lists. And I've already created a view called issues, but I'm going to back up and just create that from scratch so you can see how I got there. So let me see. I'm actually just going to create a new view using the plus button. And I'm going to change the category to issues. Great, it's feeling familiar. And where all of these queries are true, name is not. So if it exists, it will show up. That's what that's saying. And so we're going to click check. And here we have a list of issues. There's not that much other stuff. We could add fields that we want to view. So we could say stewardship name, so at least we know what we're looking at. So we can see, and let's reorder that too. Boop. And finally, just to make stuff nice and clear, I do want to look at dates as well. So we'll say the identified on date will be good. So we can see that on 3-16, someone found that John's stinky rock was far too stinky. Okay, great. So let's say this as issues view 2, because I already have an issues view. Just wait for that to finish. Great. So now we have issues view 2, which is looking at a list of all issues. And if we click on one, it'll lead right to that issue. So first, I'm going to show. So there's a report button over here. And since we're in issues, when I click this report button, it's going to look for any reports that are in the issues category, as well as any reports that are associated with the stewardship site that the record is associated with. There we go. So here's my issues report that I just created. And if I click on it, it's just one little report with one record. And that's because we're inside the report when we're creating, we're inside the issue record when we created this report. So it only pulled out that one single entry. But that's not very useful. So now we're gonna back up and head back to the views, the issues view that I created. So issues view 2, wait for that to load. Great. And so I'm going to use this button to select all, and you'll see a new, 2 new icons appear up here, 2 new buttons. There's delete selected items, which I really don't want to do, but there is export selected items. And what we're going to do is we're going to export everything we just checked to a report. So you can either export to a spreadsheet or you can export to a report. And it's going to look at whatever category you associated that report with. So since we're in issues, it's going to look in the issues category and see if there are any associated reports. And there are. There's the issues report, which we just made. So we're going to select that, click OK, and you can see that it generated that nice list. Maybe I want to add some spacing in there, but it's going backwards in time. So we have the most recent one at the top. It's showing all of, yeah, this is pretty much what we wanted, aside from a little spacing stuff. So that is how to do reports. I hope that was useful to you. I know it took me a little time to get my head around how reports work. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're having a little trouble. Stick with it, experiment, and if you can't figure it out, you can always reach out to us, and we're always happy to help. So that's it for today, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.